Some interesting news. Honda and Aston Martin. Aston Martin. Aston Monda. I'm sure there'll be a portmanteau of this drummed up sooner rather than later. Like McLaren had McIndy for the IndyCar operation or McHonda for the failed F1 team-up a few years ago. It's a good thing that Piastri and Panis haven't teamed up, isn't it? Yeah, I'll let you figure that one out. But either way, it ends speculation as to who or whom Honda will supply when the next generation of engine construction comes in for 2026. Honda, Audi, Red Bull, Ford, Mercedes, Renault and Ferrari all on the grid. 6 engine constructors. Maybe 7 with Cadillac if that happens, but I think they're just going to be rebadged Hondas. But anyway, the thing to take away here is, when was the last time we had that many? Probably back in the early 2000s when you had the likes of Toyota and BMW knocking about. It's been a while, hasn't it? With Ford committing to Red Bull, there were rumours of a third marriage at McLaren as Zak Brown was spotted talking to Honda at one point, and there was also a bit of speculation that Honda could go back to supplying Williams, which, I mean, that could still happen, but since ex-Mercedes brain James Vowles is now at Williams, it might just be that. Speculation. So why Honda? Aston's engine partnership with Mercedes expires at the end of 2025, so the year before the new engine construction formula comes into effect, and we'll have no doubt seen what Honda has managed to achieve with Red Bull in the last few years. Lawrence Stroll is on record as saying he wants to win, and Martin Whitmarsh, the group CEO of Aston Martin Performance Technologies, said, "Our FutureWorks partnership with Honda is one of the last parts of the jigsaw puzzle to put into place for Aston Martin's ambitious plans in Formula 1. And Aston's good fortunes that have elevated it to where it is currently in the F1 pecking order now means it's 4 teams with a shot of getting on the podium. I mean, you've got Red Bulls usually occupying the top spot, but you've got Mercedes, Ferrari and Aston fighting amongst themselves, with the 3 being pretty close on qualifying pace. People might have their opinions on Lawrence Stroll, Lance Stroll and the whole thing, but to see a 4th team in there, you'll have to see it. And I'll admit, I'm a bit of a fan of Aston's road cars. But they all look the same, say Porsche fans. While the current relationship between Aston and Mercedes is a close one, with Mercedes supplying parts of the rear suspension, engines and gearboxes, with Aston now in the position it's in, the next step is to look at Mercedes as not just a supplier anymore, but as a target. Now they want to be ahead of them. They want wins. They want a championship. And with the last 10 years dominated by 2 teams, who would say no to that? So to have a team with ambition to get out of mid-grid mediocrity and try to push to battle the big boys of Formula 1 is great. Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari are the 3 big names of the series, currently, and a team with a historical name such as Aston Martin, painted in a colour as iconic as British Racing Green, well, I mean, a bit of a tangent here, it's a variation of British Racing Green because there is no actual official British Racing Green. Aston's is more of a teal colour, Bentley's is super dark, and Lotus is the proper one, if you will. Tangent aside, you've got a historic name that wants to make that name proud. If you follow me. But for some it might seem a tad odd that Honda is constantly in and out like it's doing a round of the hokey cokey. Honda left in 2008, then it came back, and then it left again in 2021, and now it wants back in. But it's been enticed back in by F1 sustainability aims that it wants to achieve by 2030. The 2 big Japanese manufacturers in Honda and Toyota have been heavily involved in hybrid and hydrogen cars for some time. Honda with things like the Insight, that was the first hybrid on sale in North America back in 99, 2000 or so, and then you've got Toyota with the Prius, which was the hybrid car for some time. Toyota's also got the Mirai, which is a hydrogen car, and both companies have been involved with the advancements of the technologies. For 2030, Formula 1 wants to become carbon neutral and make the switch to fully sustainable fuels for 2026, and the new engines will have more electrical power on tap too, so they want to get on board with that, and hopefully have the research and development trickle down into their road cars. I mean, that's the theory, at least. But there's also the other thing that's going on here. There's someone currently driving that green car that's got a little bit of a checkered history with Honda. Fernando Alonso Diaz. The man who infamously said that Honda's engines were shit without actually saying they're shit during Honda's home Grand Prix that one time. Reports are saying that Honda's executives they're cool with it. It's all water under the bridge. Maybe they accept that at that time in 2015 the engines weren't that good and that they are sorry and regretful they couldn't make it work. I mean, I love Japanese culture. The exact words from Koji Watanabe were, "If we were to team up with Alonso again as our driver, we have no objections whatsoever with him driving." This also coming after Alonso ditched Honda to race for their arch rivals Toyota at Le Mans as well. But there is something to factor in here. Would Alonso even be around in Formula 1 at that point? He'd be 44 going on 45 when the 2026 season starts, and he might have called it quits by then. Martin Whitmarsh acknowledges that this is all beyond what Alonso is planning, and the fact that Honda and Alonso have shook hands and made up may open the door for Alonso to go back to Indianapolis, either with Andretti or another Honda team, and maybe put that final stamp down on motorsport's Triple Crown, a title held by only one man since 1972. I mean, Jeff Hurst is no longer the only player to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final, so, you know, this record can fall too. Now this leads me into something that I noticed in the comments section of the motorsport.com article regarding this whole Alonso and Honda thing. Aston might find itself in a bit of a tricky situation, which was something touched upon in a comment left by Mr. Tom Hartley. You've got the whole Lance Stroll is Lawrence Stroll's son thing, and Aston, like every other team on the grid, can only have 2 drivers. And while Honda has been pretty cool about not forcing a Japanese driver into a car seat, like at Red Bull or even McLaren, could that be something that they might want to do for marketing purposes now that they're going to be back? Stroll is naturally going to want to keep his son in the car. In the words of the original comment, Alonso is going to want Alonso. But if Fernando isn't there come 2026, Aston is going to need a driver that can A, lead the team, B, wheel, C, stack up against the likes of Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc and whoever else might be up there at that time, D, develop the car and do so for 5 or more years. If Aston is serious about pushing for the championship, winning races and all of that, maybe Stroll will have to at some point say, sorry son, but this is business, but I've heard that Graham Rahal is hiring. But it is an interesting time for Aston Martin. And there's another interesting fact that's been on a few of these news websites. Throughout the last 30 years or so, the operation run out of a factory directly opposite the Silverstone circuit has often been the team that can deliver on a tiny budget. Eddie Jordan spent $12 million in 1991 for 5th in the Constructors' Championship. Jordan would then have a driver in the hat for the 1999 Championship despite not having the budget of McLaren or Ferrari, and then would survive right up until the end of the 2004 season when the team was sold to the Midland Group. They raced as Jordan in 2005 but then changed names for 2006. Then for 2008, after being in the hands of the Midland Group and the Dutch car company Spyker, the team became Force India, which, like Jordan, often managed to do well despite a very limited budget. But now, that team, it's the same factory, it's the same facilities, it's just a different entry, but I'm sure you know what I mean. It's now Aston Martin. Having driven past that same factory earlier this month, there's a lot of building work going on, and they're really, really going for it. Like I said before, it's got a name that's pretty old, pretty iconic. It's actually a name older than Ferrari. It's James Bond's car of choice, except for when he had a Z3, and a Sunbeam, and a 30-year-old Bentley, and the Lotus Esprit. It's not going to end up having the same amount of success as Ferrari, but it can at least have some success and put some success to the name. It's got class wins at Le Mans and wins in other sports car events. Now, to take it to the top of the so-called pinnacle of motorsport. Just gotta hope that it all works out. So then, a look at this team up for 2026 between Aston Martin and Honda. If this has given you some food for thought, then give the video a like, and for more stuff like this or anything I do around here, subscribe with the bell on for all the latest. And why not leave your own opinions in the designated comment submission zone. Massive thanks to the kind folk at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help out with keeping things running around here, then a link to Patreon is in the description along with links to the F1 store where if you buy stuff I get a kickback, and there's also Discord, socials and other bits and pieces. Or the super thanks if you just wanted a one-off tip. So until next time, I've been Millward. Have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.